Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Matt Rife has been in some hot heat lately following the release of his Netflix comedy special entitled Natural Selection. Now, Matt Rife has always been known as the good-looking comedian. He's talked about this so many times in the past about how people don't take him seriously because he's so good-looking, and he's had so many barriers to success in the comedic space, all that.
I'm good-looking. I don't like it any more than you guys do, okay? This is not good for comedy, okay?
And with his looks comes a big female fan base, which he hasn't necessarily always been appreciative of.
Up until like April this year, it was like 90% women coming to these shows, which weren't always for the right reasons. And they got there, and maybe they didn't like my comedy, and they go, well, maybe I wasn't a fan for the right reason, which is fine. So they bring their boyfriends or husbands who are always reluctant because they fucking probably bought the tickets.
Right.
They didn't want to be there. And then like 20 minutes into the show, they realize like my comedy is so much more for guys than it is girls. My live shows, to me, I've always gone for the tone of like, I just want it to feel like a hangout with the boys. Right. It breaks my heart that so many guys just won't give me a chance because I'm like, dude, we could be best friends. You just never know.
He has mentioned on several occasions that his comedy is mostly actually catered towards men and that women come to his shows for, quote, not the right reasons. I personally never appreciated how he always had this outlook that women can't appreciate comedy and are just so superficial, and it's kind of narcissistic. Like, yeah, okay, bro, yes, you're good looking, but I wouldn't buy a freaking ticket to a comedy show just because someone's good looking, you know? Not to say that I don't think that his looks had like any impact on his success, because I do, but I mean, that's not why all of your fan base like you. And I always did kind of get a slight sense of disrespect towards women coming from him, just from small things really that he would say to women in his shows, like calling them a bitch or whatnot. Nothing really big, but I mean, I get it. It's a comedy show. It's supposed to be funny and lighthearted, but some things do have a deeper meaning and can be representative of one's general attitude towards women. But yeah, his feelings towards women have really come more into light lately through his comedy special, where he constantly bashed on women and even started it making a joke about domestic violence.
I've only been to Baltimore one time. I ate lunch there, and the hostess who like seats you at the restaurant had a black eye. A full black eye. And it wasn't like, what happened? It was pretty obvious what happened. And we couldn't get over the fact that we were like, this is the face of the company? Like, this is who you have greeting people? And my boy who I was with was like, yeah, I feel bad for her, man. I feel like they should, put her in the kitchen or something where nobody has to see her face, you know? And I was like, yeah, but I feel like if she could cook, she wouldn't have that black eye. So.
People were obviously not happy about this, and in response, Matt posted this to his Instagram story saying, "If you've ever been offended by a joke I've told, here's a link to my official apology." And when you click on the link, it takes you to a special needs helmet website. Now, Matt, since then, he actually went on Jordan Peterson's podcast today to address this drama. Jordan Peterson gets straight into it. Jordan actually says his response was quite funny and he respects Matt for not apologizing for something that he doesn't actually believe in. Jordan asked Matt why he took this approach, and Matt responds saying because it's just comedy and it doesn't have a meaning any more than that. Jordan mentions how most comedians just write their jokes ahead of time, and what Matt tends to do, in contrast, is more akin to spontaneous wit, which is quite a dangerous thing to do because you don't get to think through what you're saying. Matt says you have to kind of let the intrusive thoughts to win in comedy, because if you're a naturally funny person, the first thing that comes to mind is usually the funniest thing. Peterson asks how broad scale this rebellion against Matt Rife is.
It's probably a few dozen thousand, which sounds like a lot until you remember there's 8 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
And I would say 90% of the small majority that is upset with me doesn't go to comedy shows anyway, or wouldn't vibe with me as a person anyways, which is fine.
You want them to spend eternity in a hell composed of nothing but people like them talking to them.
Unrelated, in this podcast, Jordan Peterson comes out to look like a pretty big fan of comedy, which I never would have thought he'd be for some reason. He just seems like a little bit of a dry, boring guy, but I guess there's more to him than meets the eye. Back to it, Matt says that people who don't like him just need to remove themselves from the situation, and nobody is forcing anybody to listen to his jokes. Jordan says a lot of these people who are hating on Matt gain some sort of benefit from virtue signaling and go above and beyond to sort of bring up their own moral character in the eyes of other people. Jordan says that it's kind of unfair that people give comedians such a hard time because the line that they need to navigate around while being funny and not hurting anybody's feeling at the same time is just so damn thin. You have to, quote, be playing with a disaster in order to be funny. Matt says comedy to him is more about intent.
Every single thing I say on stage is said with nothing but the intention to make people laugh.
He says he understands some people have been through trauma, and so his comedy is just not for those kinds of people. Jordan actually disagrees and says that it's quite important for people who've been through a traumatic situation to not unduly protect themselves from situation that might bring it back up, and it's important to voluntarily expose yourself to that sort of environment again.
Often, some of the things we forbid aren't things that we should be avoiding or forbidding.
Jordan talks about Matt's little fake apology gimmick on Instagram, saying that his fake apology for making a bad joke about a marginalized group was to pick on an even lower status group. Matt says that his joke actually wasn't meant to make fun of any special needs people. Later on in the podcast, Jordan sort of defends this by saying,
About
you're
special needs
making
people.
fun of people claiming special needs for their emotional fragility inappropriately.
Exactly.
Right,
I'm
right.
saying
And quite nicely.
you need this way more than they do.
Yeah, right.
And the best part is that you clicked on it.
Jordan asks whether he even felt bad about having made that joke. Matt says no because it was a completely made up story. But then he says that he did go to a dinner where a girl had a little bruise under her eye and it was a conversational joke that happened at their table. To me, that doesn't really make it any better, actually, but heck, what do I know?
Well, how do you describe this humor? Is there a definition or a label for the kind of humor that you just say the worst possible scenario? It's funny because it's ridiculous, because you know it's not true.
And he says that he wants people with that kind of humor to come to his shows. And he calls the joke that he made a modern twist on an old joke. Matt says he purposely did that joke right at the beginning so people know the kind of humor that they're in for and know that if it's not for them, they can just not watch it.
Jimmy Carr does that too. He often starts out with the worst thing he can possibly say, just to establish the boundaries.
Why not? Yeah.
Matt says he finds it wildly funny to make light of a bad situation. For example, when his own grandfather passed away, his friends bombarded him with dead grandfather jokes. Jordan agrees and says the people who actually do apologize for their comedy must have doubts about their own intent. So Matt not having apologized means 1, he's either narcissistic, or 2, he's confident in his intent. Jordan completely ignores the first case and jumps straight into just assuming Matt was confident in his intent. Matt says he was, and mostly because he's tried out this joke many times before and got a positive reaction every time, even from actual domestic violence victims. Matt says this:
if it does make one person laugh, it is definitively funny.
As a nervous laugher, I couldn't disagree more. Jordan asks about his criteria for which jokes to keep. Matt says that he loves the shock value of some jokes. Jordan Peterson, in trying to explain why some people love to hate on Matt Rife, somehow manages to describe clout chasing so beautifully.
So your status capital would be directly associated with how many people know you, essentially, and appreciate what you do. And what that means is that hangers-on can now leverage that for their own purposes. And the quickest and easiest way to do that is to complain about you publicly in a way that looks like it's compassionate, right? Because there's zero effort on behalf of the person who does that. And what they're doing then is stealing some of your accrued social capital.
Listen, I may not agree with a lot of the things that this man says, but I aspire to be able to speak like him. Like, I would have worded this as like, people are just lazy clout whores. Oh, and then funny enough, Matt is exactly like me.
Clout chasing at its definition, to attach yourself to what somebody else has going on for your own selfish gain, is so pathetic.
Jordan asks why he's had such a large female fan base. Matt says he doesn't actually know. It could be his face, it could be his humor. Jordan says that he's really good at humoring women who heckle him, and listen to what Matt says here.
Women were coming to shows requesting to be roasted. Now, obviously, I don't mean anything I say. I mean, shut up and stop yelling out at shows.
And if you were curious, Matt says this entire situation has made him gain more followers across all platforms than lose, because people actually appreciate the honesty in his humor rather than just political correctness. The comments were actually very supportive under this video towards Matt. One user said, "I love Matt Rife. I'm so tired of a walk on eggshells, thin-skinned, passive-aggressive, goalpost-moving world that's evolved over the past decade." Another user said, "Matt's unapologetic attitude towards cancel culture and ability to articulate himself are true signs of a quality comedian." But that just may be the fan base of Jordan Peterson, and we know that there's a really particular person who listens to Jordan Peterson. So I also went over to Spill Sesh's comment section on her video on Matt Rife to see what people said there and sort of be able to get a more well-rounded idea of what people's opinions are. One user said, "Everyone talks about the pick-me girl. What we really need to talk about is the pick-me boys," which is exactly what Matt Rife is. And lastly, one user commented, "The fact that he said his stand-up is for the boys, but his promo image was the thirst trap is wild." Okay, everyone, that was it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know your opinions in the comments down below. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.